Okay, I'm going to introduce myself right now. Hi, would you like to come up on stage? Thank you very much. Here I am. I'm the guy between lunch and, between you and lunch, essentially. I want to talk about the princess in the room today. The princess called pricing, right? And everybody knows you got to treat the princess like royalty. I want to pick up on a couple of things that we have heard over the last couple of hours. So we had James talking about the data economy. So there's more and more data out there for us to make decisions. We had Matthew, so finally saying pricing is all over the shop. Thank you very much. And then we had Buddy telling us, telling us it's hard to increase, easy to drop. As long as you hit budget, though, happy life, happy wife. And then Bilal telling us when he asked the question, who's in charge of pricing, everybody went quiet when they got home. So it might be good to have a look at the art and science of pricing and really look at it from 3 angles. The first one, I want to know, is bar actually still relevant? Or is it a concept completely outdated? Secondly, I want to know, is the data that we're using to come up with bar still relevant? With so much stuff going on in the industry, do we really still rely on our old just PMS data, for example? And then lastly, I want to look at the road ahead and what's happening in the future, hopefully. If I would have stood here a couple of years back, it would have been relatively easy. I would have said, hey guys, look at the left, that happens when you have one price. Look at the right, that happens if you have multiple prices. Everybody would have said, oh, great, yeah, we don't want to leave money on the table. We don't want to pass up profits. So hence, we're going to have different rate levels, so on and so forth. Reality, though, is it has become a bit crowded out there. And the reason I say it has become a bit crowded, let's look at our distribution landscape over the last couple of years. In 2007, incredibly on Booking.com, you had 29,000 hotels. In 2016, you have 884,000 hotels that are being featured. So they have grown by quite a bit. And if you then include that vacation rentals, holiday rentals, villas, so on and so forth are included in that, it's not only us out there anymore. There's other options for the consumer that they can choose. Overall, the world today has evolved. Couple of stats, if we look at the population of today, 50% is approximately male, 50% is female. There's about 60% covered by Asians, followed by Americans and Africans, and then the Europeans. To give you a relative overview of the population that exists in the world today. 44% of us only have access to internet. That means 56% still don't. But 75% of us own a mobile phone or a smartphone, so to speak. So there's still an incredible potential for us to go out there and replicate what we have done over the last couple of years, but equally going into markets where we have been for so many years that we can't just do what we did over the last 5 years. Yeah, we're all talking about total revenue management. It's fantastic. We want to go down that route. I fully agree. Yet, let's not forget about the princess. The princess still wants to be treated well because in a lot of cases, it's still 70% of your overall profit. And if you look at the development statistics, especially in Asia, the economy hotels are booming. It's 80 to 90% pure rooms revenue that is coming through the door, with a little bit of F&B here and there, but the majority will still be around the rooms revenue. So the princess is not going to go away. The princess is going to keep on staying with us. It's fair to say the consumer, the distribution landscape, and to a certain extent our pricing has evolved over the last couple of years. So if we look at the distribution landscape, you had offline business all the way from Thomas Cook in the beginning, all the way to the likes of Airbnb, so on and so forth, now cropping up left, right, and center. On the pricing landscape, we started with the super savers in the airline industry, and now we're moving all the way to near-field communication, iBeacon beacon technology, or geo-specific pricing within your area. And lastly, we then come into the consumer. The consumer has evolved the fastest. Back in the day, most of us remember what a Nokia is. If I ask my daughter what a Nokia is, she will look at me. But she knows what an iPad is. She knows it very well. So we are more savvy, we're more informed, more opinionated. And I would have normally stopped at connected, but the next big trend seems to be internables. So now you're not wanting wearables, but you want that stuff under your skin to make it even more fancy. Is that where we're going? Well, soon maybe all of us are going to be interfaced. Well, that means we need to evolve as well. Can you imagine? We can all sit somewhere else and then... So essentially we need to evolve, and with more competition, with more complexity, the lines blurring not only between rate products, but equally within our hotel industry itself. Who's looking after the website? Is it marketing now? Is it revenue management? Is it a bit of both? Who looks after digital, the remarketing stuff? I don't know. It's you. No, it's me. No, it's not me, it's you. And then at the end, somehow it still gets done and muddled together. But we're still trying to give a service at the end of the day. So we can't forget that. We're still a service provider, and if our price is fantastic and the experience is really, really bad, your price is wrong, essentially. So there's a lot of factors that we need to take into consideration looking at it from a 360 perspective. So my question is really, is bar still up for the challenge of today? So let's define bar. So bar has been around for quite a bit. It was introduced by us copying or mimicking the airline industry, so to speak. We have complicated it a bit more, I do believe, for good, for bad, for indifference. And then we're looking at the bar. Essentially, if you look at it, is a rate that is available to the general public. Would everybody agree with that? Yeah? It further on is not prepaid, correct? Yeah? Still like this? Not impose any cancellation or change penalties for that rate product. So we call that unfenced. Yet it also includes some fenced rates if you look at other definitions. So there's a bit of confusion still out there today as to what exactly is bar. And that's why I want to talk about bar today, to say, okay, let's try and understand the DNA of bar. The DNA of bar is relatively simple. It has a price element. It has a cancellation element to it, non-cancelable, cancelable, maybe cancelable. And it has a guarantee attached to it, prepaid, non-prepaid, post-paid. And lastly, it will have some form of package elements, let's call them. It could be room only, it could be breakfast. When we look at bar, it's generally room only, it's the best available rate, it's on the day and no prepayment. Correct? That's what we define bar, or that's what we have been taught. This is how we define bar. And that goes back as far as 2000 and even prior. So we come into the first hurdle when we look at the matter of tracking. I guarantee you that if I lay all of your market segmentations on the table, there'll be a big difference between the left of the room towards the right of the room. Just by looking at how people treat effectively the same, different. A bar coming via the OTA, is that still considered a bar, or is that going into my OTA segment? We are using leisure and corporate. So we don't really use bar. So we have a little bit here and a little bit there. So the tracking overall is also very confusing. And when we had the earlier discussion about, do we speak the same language with our owners? Nope. Do we speak the same language amongst ourselves? Well, let's be honest, sometimes we don't, right? But we all nod and say, when that conversation comes up. Let's go back to the beginning and think about, I open a new hotel in a market. I don't have another hotel there, so some might run feasibility studies. For us, it starts with a price positioning exercise. Generally, I don't know how small it is, you have reviews at the bottom axis, and then you will have an average price on the left-hand axis, and then you plot all your competitors, and essentially you whack yourself in the middle. What you're essentially doing is you're taking a macro-level approach, and then you're bringing it down to the area or city, then you're filtering it down to your competition, or your perceived competition, so to speak, at this point in time. Am I right? That's generally how you do your price positioning, and once a year throughout budgeting, it kind of resurfaces, because some owner will say, ooh, too cheap, or even too expensive. So we're ending up with a bar structure. And there's a lot of discussion out there in the industry about, should it be continuous pricing, open pricing, do you need bar levels, don't you know bar levels? Regardless what you do in between, you will still have a top and still have a bottom, essentially, right? Because somebody will agree the bottom and somebody will agree the top. Otherwise, I want to see you going into the meeting and say, yep, your bottom is going to be 1. And your top is going to be 1 million. Not going to fly. So you got to set the parameters somewhere. What you do in between, different story. But it still doesn't answer the question, so how many rate products should I have? How many derivatives should I have of bar? Should I have different pricing by channel? And how do I price my different segments? And do I do it statically or do I do it dynamically? Do I do it off bar or just a separate entity on its own? Now, in order to understand that, we need to understand the paradox of choice. Or we got to go and taste marmalade. Yeah? One or the other. Back, I believe, in the 70s, they did a study where they let consumers try out different jams. And what they did is they had 6 jams and they had 24 jams. And what they saw is that they had a 30% better uptake when they only showed 6, which led to the belief that you give somebody too much choice, it is counterproductive. Now, over the years, there is so many studies that have tried to replicate that, and a lot of them have not been able to, until recently when they have linked it back to the paradox of choice to really say, okay, it does qualify fully if there are certain elements met. For example, you really, really, really want that vacation. Then too much choice is not going to help you. Less choice will make you a better decision. They've then gone cross-industry. They have given people chocolate and let them try. And similar results. They have given people retirement funds to choose from, investment choices. Most of the time what happened is you gave too much choice and the complexity increased, people just don't get it, and they make poor decisions. Is that happening to us as well? Us as the operator, us as the pricing gurus, us who takes the princess to prom? But not only do we need to understand the marmalade, we also need to understand apples. And it's really about product differentiation. And product differentiation, now we're crossing the lines over to marketing. Marketing will tell you all about product differentiation. But we need to understand it because we need to price it, right? Is price going to be our differentiator? No, because we're taught all the way from the beginning it's all about value. It's all about value creation. So it's not only my USPs against my competitors, but I got to make sure that the one segment doesn't buy into the other segment. Otherwise, we're using fancy words like cannibalization to say one is eating into the other. Talking about apples, Apple has actually done quite a good job at that by gaining a competitive advantage within their industry. And every year over the last years, they were told you can't go any better with Apple because they already have done the iPhone. So the share prices again went up because they came out with a different version of the iPhone. Smaller, more budget conscious, and it's more for the female travelers. Right? So again, they've proved that by giving a good product differentiation, you can still influence certain consumers that you currently don't have.